At what point did factory get a negative connotation, do you think?
I have my own theories, which I'll share.
Please do. Because when people go, oh, factory work, they think, oh, that's bad. You're sitting there doing some menial task over and over again.
Right.
That's what some people think of factory work. And I'll agree with you. And I bet you that is part of what Charlie was feeling. When he walked in there, what you think of a factory is not what a factory is, especially in our case.
Right. And they're portrayed negatively, but it's all education. Here's what happened. In that letter, he said, we don't have any textiles to make apparel and clothing, or probably leather yet, tanned leather to make shoes and accessories, things you need for survival. So New Englanders were forced into a position, and we talk about like hands in daylight, right? They had their hands and they had daylight. And they had whatever they brought for livestock to be able to build their farms. They cleared the fields by hand. They cut the trees by hand. And if you've ever stumped a tree by hand, that's an absolute nightmare. One tree could take a full day to stump it, to pull the stumps and roots out of the ground, to build a field, to have the cows, to raise the cattle.
Have you stumped a tree by hand?
Oh, yeah.
What's that process?
You got to dig. So to stump a tree by hand, you have to, after you cut the tree down, you dig around like all the roots, and then you take an axe and you cut the roots as low as you can, and you pull the stump up. And the stump is massively heavy because it's the wood and it's all the organics that have grown around it. It comes up with it. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I've never done that without a machine.
Dude, without a machine, which they didn't have.
Yeah.
And so there was this necessity to live, right? And okay, we have to be self-sufficient. We can't rely on provisions from England. We have to become self-sufficient. So the direction and the focus of the people in as a union was amazing when people come together for a common cause. We know that's an amazing thing. And as immigration happened, the French and the Irish and everything else, they all came together to build these factories, to harness the power of New England's rivers. And they had to. But what happens after had to, now you have it. And over the generations, it's expected and you become complacent. And complacency is what tore us down, because we didn't fight hard enough to keep our factories here. We just didn't. We didn't fight hard enough. Why? Because we're complacent. Everyone's making a great wage. And this is 150 years later. The textile mills and the spinning mills and the dye houses and the boot companies and the leather factories and the tanneries, and all of those things were right around here, right around this area. But it becomes expected, and it went away, and it went away in the early 2000s, late 90s. So the timeline touches us, right? But didn't have impact as it did on some of the older folks.
Did we get sold a bill of good at some point that factory, like as people were trying to move factories overseas so they could save money, did we get sold a bill of goods that, hey, factory work isn't what you want to be doing?
Well, what I think is that through the complacency, like if you look at our grandparents, for instance, which they told us the stories. Hey, I used to go to the mill when I was 8. I'd go to the tannery. I'd pull tacks out of the hides. That was my grandfather. His mother worked in the Lowell spinning mills, right? So she was in Lowell, Massachusetts, and she worked on the spinning mills, making the wool yarn or the cotton yarn to weave the textiles. She actually used to, at the end of the shift, she would sweep up all the excess wool. She'd go home and she'd spin it by hand, and she'd make blankets and stuff with it, which we have one in the family, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you hear these stories, but you heard it as through the eyes of hardship. So immediately you're thinking that this is a hard life. So that's how we were taught. And so the way that we were brought up more so is that you need to go to college to get an education so you don't have the hardship. Factory work now is a totally different beast. It's not like back then. Yes, 8 years old, bare feet, working. That's what happened. And I think that the mindset, the gritty mindset, I think what was trying to take place was that kind of the hard work and work ethic and grit, trying to be passed down to us, our parents, and then us. But what didn't happen was the experiential knowledge of it. So you just heard it. And you know how it is when you don't experience something you really don't know. And we became complacent, and then the jobs left. They just left. Trade opened up and they left.